We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.
I do want to have your feedback on the psychological load, the mental load that comes with balancing, your profession, your personal life, the emotional demands, and how do we self-regulate that with some intentionality? How do we go into this season with a mindset of work-life balance?
It's almost as if the expectation is that it's going to be nuts and crazy, in that one huge, as you described it, starting with Halloween right on through January 1st, and into the new year. Um, it seems to be that we anticipate it and we expect it rather than understand that there's an actual possibility to achieve a work life balance during that particular time. People seem to think that when you add all of the demands of the holidays on top of it, that that's an impossibility. But actually, if we if we can break it down and we can sort of chunk it into more manageable pieces rather than looking at it from this overarching view of sort of one long mass holiday, starting with Halloween, until we collapse on New Year's Day, sometimes quite literally. Until we can kind of get past that and realize that there are options and it is manageable, even though we have that extra, I'll call it holiday load that's been added to our schedules. The other issue is we can't unplug. We were talking about this idea that, self-care goes out the window, that if you try to rest and recuperate, it's almost as if you're goofing off and you're not being productive. But, if you don't take care of you, then probably nobody else is going to. And if you go down, then you really can't help anybody else. But the expectation too is that we have to do everything. That's not really the case. It's the superwoman syndrome of a sort, saying,
Sure.
that perhaps it's time to learn to function as a team, to collaborate. That's not a failing. That's being kind of working smarter, not harder idea. So, if we can take a look at it in those pieces and break it down and take a look at what those options might look like so that people can maybe take a step back and take a breath. You and I can show them that they can make decisions. There are choices. And
Mhm.
maybe they may not like every choice that's presented to them, but there are choices.
Sure, sure. Um, I think, you mentioned there was so much there that you mentioned, but, collaboration is one way to balance life. Um, you know, Social capital is important. So, a lot of times when you say collaboration, you have some people that'll say, "Well, I don't have a spouse. I don't have any children. I don't have." Well, what about taking the time to build relationships with those around you so that you can benefit from, social capital. For instance, my neighbor was going to be her whole family was out of state. And, and this is just an example, she needed someone, she forgot there was a package coming. She needed someone, she can't be in two places at one time. She simply needed someone to get her package. Now, she trusted me to actually open her door, put her package into her house, and lock her door back. Well, she trusts me to do that. Of course, it goes without saying. You can't trust everybody to do those types of things. But that was something very small that took something off of her plate and took away from her mental load. And she was all the way across America when this happened. You can't be in two places at one time. You may not be married, you may not have children, you may not have grandchildren, but what
Mhm.
about your neighbors? What about your friends? What about church members? Someone that you can, one thing I have, in my life, and um, a lot of people don't get this, and that's fine. I have a house manager. I actually pay a house manager. My house manager is my daughter. I mean, what a sweet deal, you know?
Mhm.
So, she does over and above what you would consider as chores.
Mhm.
She actually takes on responsibilities that takes a load off of me so that I can focus on having a more balanced lifestyle so that I can get work done. I can also spend time with my family and I can also take care of my mental health where I'm not always doing,
Mhm.
right? And one thing you said that was extremely important, we are so in the West. I don't know if it's like this in the East. Um, in Western civilization, we are so bent on grind, 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 do, do, do. You have to be doing something, otherwise, you're not being productive. Well,
Mhm.
rest and balance are a part of productivity because if something happens to you, then it all goes down the tubes.
Mhm.
So it is important for you to learn self-care and even things that are a daily self-care ritual. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pray every day. Another thing I'm going to do 5 days a week, I am going to the gym. I don't care how much stuff is on my plate because that is me taking care of me.
Mhm.
Some days I feel like I've had a really long day. I need a bath, not a shower. I need to soak. I need to decompress. All of these little things that we build
Mhm.
into our lives seem really insignificant, but they end up being assets because they are helping you to maintain your sanity, especially during a really hectic time like the holiday season. And you also mentioned chopping it up. Now, this is something that I want you to speak on because as you notice, I go from Halloween to January 2nd. All of that is one big swath. So, can you speak a little bit more about how how individuals can kind of chop that up mentally so that that load doesn't feel so large?
Well, I think what we have to do is distinguish one holiday from the other. Instead of looking at it even numerically, um, I find myself doing it. I look at the calendar and say, okay, how many weeks do we have between Halloween and Thanksgiving? Where is it this year? And then figure
Hmm.
out where Thanksgiving is in relationship to Christmas. And
Hmm.
then, you know, it, well, it gives you information, but it just adds more pressure.
Yes. Hmm.
You know,
More pressure.
we're, we are going to be talking about the power of planning,
Hmm.
in another one of our discussions. But that too is an integral part of differentiating among the holidays. And also, let's take a look at a lot of families. You will have one family will take Thanksgiving one year, and
Hmm.
another family will offer to do Christmas, or maybe it's a tradition where it is always at a particular family's house. So, looking at it that way, as far as, well, what is my role in a
Hmm.
particular holiday? What would we like to do as a family for this particular holiday season? It doesn't, there are traditions, but perhaps traditions evolve, and sometimes you have to be flexible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in our case, um, we have that 501c3 nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
the Teddy Bear Project. Our busiest season is now. So
Yes.
add that to the regular um, family, and our career and professions and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with knowing that this time of year is the busiest season for that,
Mm-hmm.
because of all the children needing teddy
Yes.
bears,
Yes.
we've had to learn to collaborate with other agencies and other nonprofits and rely on our volunteers a
Mm-hmm.
bit more. We have to look at the expansion. Families grow and expand.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes, as you mentioned, we can't be in two places at once. But during the holiday season, I know some families go, if you have siblings, you'll go from one sibling's house to the next, whether the main course is here, the dessert is there, that sort of thing to accommodate.
Sure.
So not only do we need to chunk it into the respective holidays,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to also break it down into um, what the expectations are for each one and
Mm-hmm.
how we can sort of rely on each other,
Mm-hmm.
to, I don't want to say get through it. The idea is to enjoy it.
Right, right. Not just get through it. Like I
And
teach people, you
yes,
should not.
that
You should not.
sense of dread. Oh no, here we
Yes.
go again.
Yes. You shouldn't feel like I have to get through this song. Midway, it's like, oh God, I have to get through. Then that means something needs to be approached different. There's something that needs to be different. If you are feeling like, oh, I have to get through this, right? Let's get through the holidays, you know. And of course, grieving during the holiday season is a real thing. And that's not what we're referring to. We're
Mm,
referring to balance, having a work-life balance, because most of us can't take off the whole end of the year,
mm,
right? Some people take off all of Q4. I know people that they literally don't work at all during Q4. They may work the beginning of Q4 in the year and then that's it. They don't work anymore. Well, realistically speaking, everybody can't do that. And so finding other things to bring balance, right? Everybody can't afford to pay a house manager. Everybody can't afford to take off, the second half of Q4 or all of Q4.
mm,
Everybody can't afford to do that. So, some realistic ways that we can balance ourselves during the season. Now, um, I don't want to get too far into preparation, planning. I don't want to get too far into that because that's another episode. But we have to mention, as you did, you have time to prepare. You have time to plan things out. One thing that always brings mental peace and mental balance is
mhm,
simple preparation on the front end. You
mhm.
know, prepare. You know that there's going to be a lot of things going on. Sit down, plan things out, and make sure that you do not overcommit.
Yeah.
If you overcommitting is a nightmare. And
Mhm.
I don't even want to discuss overcommitting and you haven't planned anything. You just keep telling everybody, yes. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Oh, yeah, we can be there. That is not wise. And your mental load is going to be incredible because everything you do normally has an attachment with it. Not only do I need your physical body there, which that can also be too much at times. I need your physical body and I need you to bring a dish. I need your physical body and I need you to pay for this. I need your physical body and I need you to go and grab so and so. There's always something attached to that. So plan out the times that you can foresee are going to be hectic. You know, If you have a huge gathering every year for Thanksgiving, then you need to be strategic and plan that out. I just had somebody ask me maybe like 2 days ago, hey, can you come and I want to eat at your house for Thanksgiving? No problem. Here is my thing. You have to be willing to come like 5 days before Thanksgiving to my house because this is a distance that I'm going to have to drive. Why? Because I have to have the time to come and get you and come home.
Mhm.
I need to rest from that. And then I have to have time to cook all this food without feeling rushed and pressured and and because I want to be able to enjoy, I don't want to still be cooking on Thanksgiving. I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
So knowing ahead of time gives you power
Yes.
because you can plan things if you know ahead of times. A lot of times we give up our power simply because we don't prepare for things that we know are coming. I mean, Thanksgiving and Christmas, they come every year. It's like the person that waits to buy gifts. Like, why would you wait until December 21st to buy gifts? I don't understand. You are causing your own self a lot of anxiety,
Mhm.
a lot of financial detriment because you're trying to spend all of this money at one time. That's so chaotic and out of balance. So many things can be remedied if you would just plan properly.
Mhm. And sometimes we run into somebody else commits us to something. And the thing that came to mind was the other concert. In this case, my musical example. You know, you have a Christmas concert. You
Mhm,
are spending months preparing for a Christmas concert. One
mhm.
month before that date, you are informed that you are performing another Christmas concert a week later.
Oh my goodness. Is it the same music?
Well, that remember last year,
Okay.
and I had one Christmas concert with the chorale.
Yes. Yes.
And then about a month before that, we were informed that we were performing with the Philharmonic.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Was it the same music? Well, even if it was, that doesn't even matter.
It
What
almost, yeah,
matters is you now we have to rehearse with the Philharmonic, right? We
right.
can't just so we have there's rehearsal. What if we have already planned things out with our family? See, this is the power in saying no.
Hmm.
No, not to be mean, not to be cruel, not to be, not to be closed off, but to use wisdom. No, I can't. No. Well, why? Because I know, just know. I don't have to explain. There's no explanation necessary unless I have foretold you that I would do something and now I can't. Then I need to offer an explanation. But if you ask me to do something, if you ask my choir to come somewhere, if you ask my family to come somewhere, if you ask me to come somewhere and I have already committed to doing this, then the answer has to be no. Why? Because if I say yes to all things, that is the start of overcommittal. It's that's the start of just being overcommitted. You have to do this and this and this. And that is, I don't know who planned that like that. I'll just say, um, that was a very interesting thing to do. I'll just leave that there.
2 years in a row. That was last year. Then
Wow.
again this year, which doesn't involve me. Um, what I would, but what I would love to do is a podcast.
Mhm,
Now that we're talking about it,
mhm,
down a rabbit hole a little bit, but about this
mhm.
overcommitting, about
Yes.
this being able to say no without feeling guilty and without feeling that you have to justify it. I think that it's so important because so many people struggle with that.
Yes, and I used to be one of them, and then I got older, and then no became my favorite word. No, because with age, hopefully, you are growing and you are becoming wiser.
Mhm.
And so I used to tell everybody yes whenever, can you do this? Sure. Can you do this? Sure. Can you do? Of course. And then I got older and I was like, no, I would so far extend myself. And I had to learn that's not fair to me.
Mhm.
And saying no is not an act of being mean. See, I think we register that as an act of being mean or rude. If you say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. For some reason, some of us, and I think, you know, that's personality driven as well.
Mhm.
Um, my personality, I'm really laid back and I'm always wanting to help everyone. And I'm an empath just naturally.
Mhm.
And so those type those types of personality traits, you have to be careful because people will drain you and they don't mean to. Well,
Mhm.
some people do mean to, but everyone doesn't have malicious intent, but it can become draining because you are always giving, 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 and you are always being depleted and
Mhm.
not pouring back into yourself. And you throw your whole life completely out of balance when you behave that way. When that's how you live your life. You can't always say yes. You just can't. And it's okay to be that way. That's how I keep my life in balance now. I cannot say yes to everything. Otherwise, my world is thrown into chaos.
And I think we have to take a look at the request. I will never forget. I I believe it was something like 12 dozen Christmas cookies one year, and I agreed. My kids were small, and it sounded simple. And the next thing I knew, I mean, I was buried in cookies. So when these requests come up now,
Yes.
I am sort of driven back to that Christmas cookies everywhere scenario, and try to take a look at what does the request entail, and what
Mhm.
have I already committed to?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So, one thing is planning. That's one strategy to help yourself remain balanced during this season because some people do great with balance the rest of the year. It's just the holiday seasons, everything becomes, it's almost like we just lose all sense of what to do. And then it's like, oh my God, the holidays, and it's that should not be that way. You should still be operating from a planned out perspective. Just because it's the holidays, and even more so, you should be planning during the holiday season. Now, performers, of course, this is a season of heavy performance, right? Heavy singing, dancing, you know, performers have to be very strategic in how they plan out their season.
Mhm.
Block off times that you will take a gig because someone just, people are still booking for December. People are starting, and some people are just starting to book for like, December and, the Christmas stuff. If you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you're strategic with blocking off what you're going to do and when you're going to do gigs and when you're going to rest.
Mhm.
What types of gigs that you are going to open yourself up for, and what is like your non-negotiables.
Mhm.
Don't forget you're a performer, but you also have a job. A lot of performers still work 9 to 5 jobs. You have
Yeah.
to factor that in. You have to factor in you have a job. You have to factor in that you have to have rehearsals. You have to factor in that you have a family. You have to factor all of that in. You
Mhm.
know, One thing to do is to sit down and write out everything um, that desires you. And that just simply means everything that you have obligation to, right?
Mhm.
Your family, and which includes your spouse, your children, your extended family, you have a job, right? You have to pay bills, and you're a performer, so performers perform. Well, what does performance entail? That entails rehearsals, you know. Uh, I need to be able to rest during all of this stuff. I have to be able to rest because if I don't, and when I say I mean from anyone that is performing, if
Mhm.
I don't rest, I won't be my best for anyone, for
Mhm.
the stage, for my family, for myself. If you do not rest, you can't show up and be optimal for anyone in any facet. So always factor that in. So plan that out. I don't know why some people are very against that. And creative people have a way of kind of going with the flow, you
Yeah.
know, being super laid back, and I get it. I wholeheartedly get it. You know, go with the flow. But you have to know what that looks like in a schema of planning. You can plan and still go with the flow to a certain extent. Use wisdom, you know. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So performers are, you know, that looks very different at times, you know. You may be up singing at 11, 12 at night when everybody else is asleep. Well, that's not your time to rest,
Mhm.
you know, but you have to find that time, pencil in that time to relax, rest, and recover, and make sure that you are consistent and dedicated to.
Mhm. Sometimes planning is thought to stifle creativity, which really isn't. It's not the case because you do have to be flexible and resilient, and you can still
Definitely.
do that within the guidelines of some level of planning. We're
Hmm.
not saying be so. Once you write it down, you're not going to change it no matter what happens.
Hmm.
It's carved in
Definitely.
stone, it's not going anywhere.
Yes.
Not suggesting that, but, just it's a reality check. Take a look at that
Hmm.
calendar online, hard copy, whatever. Just figure out what's available. And if you choose to do it, just
Hmm.
because there's an empty day or an empty spot doesn't mean that you have to fill everything up.
Definitely. Most definitely. Definitely. And check in, do self check ins. Check in with yourself. How are you feeling mentally? How are you feeling physically? You know, be realistic.
We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.